Hey everybody. So I just wanted to make a quick off-the-cuff video sharing my thoughts about a pet peeve I have. And that is with the phrase, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. Now, I just really don't like this phrase. Part of that is probably just attitude on my part. It seems just to have this smarmy simplicity to it, and a lot of people pass it around, and that just kind of bugs me. And I don't know, a core thing is this saying is just really stupid on its face in a way that I find just really obvious. Like a lot of doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result could just be persistence or practice, things like that. I used to be a basketball player, so if I'm practicing free throws and I make like 4 out of 10 and I keep shooting over and over and over again and expecting my shooting to get better, as long as I've kind of honed my form and listened to my coach and stuff like that, I'm doing the same thing. I'm expecting different results, being that I'll get better. But that's not insanity, right? There's nothing wrong with that at all. So much of life, as long as you're willing to learn lessons from how you do things in the past, is just trying to get things down through repetition. You are technically doing the same thing over and over again and hoping that your results will change. So just kind of a weird definition for that reason, right? On the flip side, somebody could do things being perfectly happy with the results and maybe come off as a little of what we might say is insane, right? Like say a guy was running around town square wearing a tinfoil hat, throwing poop at everybody and laughing. He might be perfectly happy with the results of what he's doing. He might find a lot of joy in that and have no problem. He doesn't need any different results. Is he not insane? So, I don't know. This just seems like a really weird phrase. And I can see how people think there's maybe some kind of truth to it, but I don't think it's useful. And it gets people not thinking about what they call insanity or mental health or anything like that in any serious way. There's a certain satisfaction with just summing things up in a clever phrase that I just find a little bit appalling, especially considering how meaningless that is. You might think I'm a party pooper just well actualing this phrase. Well, there are some situations where this doesn't seem to apply, even though they think it sums up some truth. But isn't that the core point of this issue? That because there are so many obvious counterexamples, what does this phrase even do for us? Why are we saying this? Except maybe to make ourselves feel clever. And I guess that's one of the questions I have. Why does this phrase persist? I think what this is trying to appeal to in an imprecise way is some basic idea about irrationality, right? It seems irrational to do the same thing and expect something different to happen if you don't take into account, I guess, persistence and practice and stuff like that. You do X and then Y follows. It seems like there's a clear causal relationship there. And if you can't see that causal relationship and you keep doing X and expect something else to come out at the back end of the formula, well, what could be crazier than that? So yeah, I guess I see obviously the intuitive appeal to that, but at its core, it's just irrational. You're just talking about irrationality. And so the counterexamples I gave showed that, this behavior isn't necessarily always irrational, even though it can seem irrational at a glance. And then there are a lot of other irrational behaviors that don't fall into that saying. So what we're really doing here is boiling a concept down to a truism that just makes people feel really clever as long as they don't think about it. And maybe what bothers me about this, again, I don't know if there's a pet peeve for anybody else. Maybe it's just me. Maybe this just struck me the wrong way. I think I first saw it in a movie or something, and somebody said it really smugly, and then people pass it around in memes and stuff. But I think this is just a very deeply anti-intellectual thing to say. I don't know. I see this as a very anti-intellectual phenomena that reflects a broader thing about how people discuss ideas online or just pass things around. Everything has become memeified. A lot of complex things need to be boiled down to a saying. And I think this makes people feel like they get things that a lot of psychologists don't understand. There's a certain self-righteousness to it too, that you think people who have persistent problems in their life, this is kind of a Dr. Phil type thing. They just need to quit doing one stupid thing, quit being so dumb, quit doing the same thing over and over again. It's almost like you're a member of a Dr. Phil or a Jerry Springer audience who's looking at people and you can sum up very clearly what they're doing wrong. I think that's part of the appeal of this. But also it's making a clinical term feel very accessible to you. Like you can sum it up very easily. And so I don't know, I find something just very anti-intellectual about that, very populist about it. But the thing is, I called it a clinical term and it's not even a clinical term. And that's part of the issue here. They're looking for a clear definition for a word that is not even a psychological or clinical term. Insanity at best is just a legal term. It just means that your mindset is such that you can't understand your own actions or maybe be held responsible for them. So why are we barking so far? Not barking. Why are we going down this tangent trying to find the definition for a word that doesn't even have a clinical meaning? I think, and this might be me stretching a little bit, but it seems like insanity seems like a little bit of an obsolete word. It seems to reflect our earliest attempts to try to understand or just sum up the fact that people's thinking isn't right, that they're not behaving as expected, before we actually started to parse out what mental illness is and what various forms of mental disorders there are and how we can treat them. Well, that person's insane. Put them in the place for insane people. And so I think the vagueness of this, number one, the fact that this is the term they're trying to come up with a definition for might say something. But then also the vagueness of the term and the fact that it's so easily filled in with all these definitions that feel intuitive to people just basically show that it's a little bit of a crude, useless word to start with. And maybe that's why we're coming up with such crude, useless definitions for them. But yeah, maybe instead of just trying to, I don't know, take this vague idea that sometimes people are irrational and try to come up with a clever saying for it, maybe try to understand psychology better. Take a couple classes, maybe even get a degree if that's something you're interested in. Pursue the actual intellectual path toward understanding what this is, not, do what other people do and attend Google University for an afternoon and think you're an expert just because you came up with a definition or a meme or, I don't know, whatever. It's kind of similar to creationists or, COVID deniers or whatever. So it's not even a real term, or it's not even a real clinical term. It doesn't mean what they say it does. It's just really silly. And of course, on top of all that, they have to attribute it to Albert Einstein. Einstein did not say this. People are pretty confident they didn't. There's no documented instance of him saying it. And the phrase became popular long after he was off the scene. So cherry on top, they have to make up this term and then attribute it to Einstein. Pretty typical stuff. Anyway, that's why I don't like that phrase and was annoyed enough by it to make a video about it. I hope you enjoyed. Have a good day, everybody.